Josh, welcome to the show. I am so excited to chat about Famous at Home today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Yes, it's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this. I loved the message of this book that you co-authored with your wife, Christy. She couldn't be with us today, but I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. And for our friends who maybe are just meeting you, just meeting Christy, and haven't heard about Famous at Home yet, I would love for you to walk listeners through a little bit of your story and kind of what led to the message of Famous at Home.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, yeah, it's my wife Christy and I, we've been married for 12 years. We've got three incredible children. At least we think they're incredible anyway. They're 9, 7, and 2. So we have a little bit of an age gap there and started back over again. And really Famous at Home, I mean, it comes out of so many different variables when I get asked this question. I think, it comes out, anything that I think we do in life has a personal connection to you in some way. There's something in your story that leads you to do what you do and why you do it. And, my parents divorced when I was 10. I had amazing parents, love my parents to death. But we had divorce was very rampant in our family. I remember looking at the family history, and every single person in my family, from my parents to my grandparents to my aunts and uncles, every single person had been divorced at least once, most of them twice. But I had amazing parents. Like, I loved family. I grew up with a great childhood. I don't have the abuse or anything like that in my story, but we had a lot of brokenness as it related to relational dynamics and divorce. And I think I didn't want that for my kids. So there was that component.
Yeah.
Christy, on the other hand, grew up in a home where it was the Christian home. I mean, she grew up in her parents, an amazing family. We just got back from her brother's wedding. Her brother just got married. I had the privilege of officiating that wedding. And it was just she grew up in kind of as ideal as you can imagine, which led her for the passion for family. And so we're both counselors by trade. And I think the thing that we really started seeing, especially with people in our generation, parents with young kids and that type of thing, is this drive to find, your identity outside the home, whether that's through work or whatever that looks like. And we just started getting phone calls a lot. I'm a trained crisis responder, and we just got a lot of phone calls with moral failures, ethical failures, people who were prioritizing everything outside the home. And then I would also get calls from guys who were saying, hey, I can lead hundreds of people at work, but I come home and I have no idea how to lead my own family. And it's just chaos. And we started to see this over and over again. And our heart was to say, how do we prevent this rather than doing the crisis side of it? Like, how can we really instill in families the idea that when you are famous at home first, everything you do outside of it, you thrive in that. You're like, there's a difference when I leave to go do something, or Christy leaves and goes to go speak or whatever, and we're blessing one another out the door, or our kids are blessing us and they're not going, when are you going to be home, Dad? When are you going to be home, Mom? And can you get off your phone? It's like, no, when the home is the priority, everything else just kind of falls into place. And that's really the heart of our message.
I love that so much. My husband and I have this conversation so often. He's a lead pastor. And so that is a challenge in our lives of just maintaining that right priority order, right? Of family first and then the church. Yep. And, or rather us enforcing that, right? It's always certainly our desire, and we do it imperfectly, but sometimes it takes putting those boundaries in place at times, right? And so I know, whether that's the case for your life or not, listener, I know there are so many priorities tugging at us every day, no matter what our lives look like. And I would love to talk about what it looks like for a family to put one another first, and more specifically, what does it look like to be on mission as a family when even at times, that does require sacrifice, right? Even though we want to keep that priority order. So how do we balance all that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, great question. In the book, so we just released the book Famous at Home, a book by the name of our ministry. And we talk about 7 decisions, making 7 core decisions to help you put your family center stage. And I can walk through some of those, because you asked, that's a big question.
Yeah.
And because Because it does. It really requires intentionality, and it requires consistency over time. And I think the thing I
Mm,
want to say to you, just to the listener right now, and even hearing you say, we don't do it perfectly, and neither do we. Like, it is a constant
yeah.
coming back. Like, we're in a season right now of even, one of the decisions is putting together family values. That's a big one, because if you don't put
Mm.
together values for your family, you'll be dictated by the values of the culture. You'll be
Ooh,
running
that's
ragged
good.
from travel sports teams and whatever else your kids are involved in. Like, and there's nothing wrong with those things. But the reality
Sure.
is where it gets wrong is when we allow everything else externally to dictate who we are as a family. That you're laying in bed one night and you're
Mm,
going, I just miss my son. I just miss my daughter. I feel like, because what we're doing is we're running ragged at the expense of individual family members, right? And so we have to
mm,
look back and go, what is our value as a family? What are our values? And we're in the process right now of even re-looking at the action steps we have under each value and identifying what really matters, because our son's getting ready to turn 10. And Christy looked at me the other day and she's like, Josh, we have, like, that's a full decade gone. We've got 8 years here to, like, really redefine
yeah.
what does it look like for him, and what do we want to cultivate in him as a family, within him, and then as a family over the next 8 years. So we're just re-looking at things because there's some mistakes we're making and some things we want to readjust. And so I just want to give grace, I think, at the very beginning, to go,
Yeah.
none of us do this perfectly. I think it's just putting it in front of you and going, okay, I want to make the first right
Mm,
step. And so for
yeah.
us, that first decision, that first right step for us is really all about, how are you showing up? Like, it's showing up as the best version of you for
Mm,
your family. And what I mean by
mm-hmm.
that is, there's a distinct difference. One of my very first changes I started making, and this is just making one change, it's kind of looking at, like,
Mm-hmm.
what is your number one thing keeping you awake at night? What is that? Is your marriage? Is it a particular relationship with a child? Is it that you feel too busy and run, not enough time is a big factor for many families that we hear. And so it's going, okay, do I need to create margin? What do I need to do? What do I personally need to do,
Yeah.
taking responsibility for me, to change the dynamic of our family? For me, and again, I'll just give some brief examples here and then let you jump in to kind of ask questions or anything. But,
Yeah.
like, for me, that was waking up at 5:30 in the morning. I personally knew that
Mm,
if I woke up, and especially when our last child was born, Micah, he's 2, but around the time that he was born, if I'm waking up when he's waking up, I mean, obviously those are survival years a little bit more, but when I wake up when everybody else wakes up and I haven't worked out or I haven't spent time with Jesus and everyone else is awake, I already feel behind. I'm a different person with
yeah.
Christy and with the kids than when I've already woken up, worked out, and spent time with Jesus. They're all waking up, the house is starting to stir, and I can show up very differently with a very different attitude, going,
Mm,
hey, everybody, because I just know that about me. So that was one
yeah.
decision I made for my life, to start showing up as the best version of me. And now that's changed because that's become a routine, that's become a habit. Now there's other things that I do. One of Christy's
Mm,
first ones was stopping eating sugar. Like, when she eats sugar, she gets, with, like, sugar, gluten, like, she's just learned in her diet, she gets inflamed. She doesn't feel good about herself, the body image issue. Like, so she was just like, and then that that influences how she treats me, like her husband,
sure.
because she doesn't feel good about herself. It comes out against me. And so she's like, I just am not going to eat sugar. That's the decision I'm going to make, because I'll feel better about myself and I will show up differently with you. And that was one thing she did. So again, it can be super simple, but it's looking at your own, how you're showing up with your kids and with your spouse and going, what one decision can I make that would just make a small
Mm,
shift in the environment of our home and how
yeah.
I show up?
That's so good. I'm thinking about our listeners who many of them do not have children yet. And even myself and my husband, we do not have children yet. And I'm wondering, sometimes you look at your friends who have children and you think, man, I'll do that differently, right? Like when I have children, or you think you know it all until you like step into that season of life, right? Like I know we thought that about marriage until we got married and experienced marriage. And so I would imagine the same thing happens with parenthood. And I'm
Yeah.
wondering if there was encouragement that you would give the girl listening who doesn't have children yet, right? Like, what
Yeah,
did
yeah.
you, what do you know now that you didn't know then that you would want to encourage them with?
Okay, here's what I will tell you. You cannot prepare for having a child. You like
Yeah,
the emotional toll that it takes. You just can't. And every family is unique. For us, a lot of our story, the reason there's an
sure.
age gap is because our first two kids were really, really difficult. Colic, acid reflux. They didn't sleep. Like,
Mm,
and we talk about this in Famous at Home. We talk about this in the book. This is really where a lot of our story was birthed. Was we were fine in our marriage for a year and a half, and I always talk about our greatest opponent came into our marriage weighing 8 pounds and 1 ounce. Like,
mm,
and research supports this. So research shows that marital satisfaction dips the most in those early years of parenting. And
mm.
what I say when I say you can't really prepare for it, you can. Please don't hear that you can't. But
Sure.
it is different than what you would expect it to be. And I can't describe that. It's so abstract, so subjective that there's not really a way for me to go, oh, if you get this stroller, you get this breast, if you breastfeed, if you get
Sure.
this, this formula, if you get this thing, like it's going to be better because your child's going to be unique, your
Right.
family's unique, this is going to be unique. But what I will say is this: here's how to prep is understanding and going into it without I think the expectation will always breed disappointment when that expectation isn't met. And the higher your
Mm-hmm.
expectations are about what it's going to be, the more disappointed and the more you look at it and you just go, there's a word I'm looking for. It's disappointed, but then that disappointment comes out in your spouse, and your spouse becomes your enemy.
Yeah.
And the reality is your
Yeah.
spouse is not your enemy. Your spouse is your greatest teammate. And so when you go into this, we have a
Mm.
good friend who runs Leaders Heart cohort with us. She says that expectation is premeditated resentment. So when you
Oh, that's
have
so good.
high expectation, what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for resentment towards your spouse. And so
Mm-hmm.
understanding that marital satisfaction is going to dip, just a lot going on, prepping for that. And I'm going to get into the emotional part of this because I think this is the best way to prep is learning to talk about emotion. So this is where we get into some of these other decisions. But the healthier patterns you can set now in your marriage, you're setting yourself up well for when you do have children.
Yeah.
Um, Healthy patterns as it relates to how you communicate, healthy patterns as it relates to what your rhythms look like in your marriage and in your family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're, and then also just walking into it with, you know, realistic expectations about what it's going to be. I think are some of the best ways that you can do that.
Yeah. That's so good. And I'm going back to the idea of expectations, and I know in the book you talk a lot about where we root our identity, right? And I think
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes when we look to external
so
things
good.
or external people, like our spouse or our children, to fulfill us
Yeah,
or to place our identity in those things, we will always be disappointed, right? Because we are
that's
imperfect
right.
people, and so will you talk a little bit about the importance of this, maybe in both spheres of marriage and in parenthood? Because I think there's different dynamics that come into play, right, with both of those and how we root our identities in Christ. Will you talk about that?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. Like identity tends to be what pulls us away from truly being present with our loved ones. I mean, and we talk about this in
Yeah.
the book, but the story of P.T. Barnum in The Greatest Showman, he's sitting on the rooftop with his girls and with his wife, and it's kind of like this picturesque moment where he really, it's like it's everything we live for, but yet his mind is wandering. His mind is moving to how does he build and make more money and build the greatest circus in the world, right? It's like it's such a great example of the things that we chase and truly not
Mm,
being present in the moment with those that we love. And usually you can tell by what's going on in your mind in those moments. Like if you find an incredible moment with your husband or your wife or your moment with your kids, and you know that you're in a beautiful moment, but you're not fully present and you're not rooted in the moment, what's
mm,
going on in your mind? Like what's worrying you? What's concerning you? What are you chasing?
mhm.
Because usually that's going to speak to what we're idolizing.
Yeah.
And that can be a whole bunch of things. I mean, we all do this, and that's why Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15, I die daily. We constantly have to be going
Hmm.
back to Jesus. Like, what my favorite hymn I think of all time is I need thee every hour, knowing I need
Yeah.
Jesus every hour. Because even after we get off this podcast, it's like, okay, I'm going to need to recenter. Like, we're having this interview, but I need to go back. Like, we're doing this interview to build for his kingdom. And it's
Yeah.
not about me, it's not about a book, it's not about you, it's not about your pot, it's about
Right.
his kingdom. And we need to just constantly remind ourselves of that through
Yeah.
spiritual disciplines and growth and that type of thing. And so again, it all goes back to that premeditated resentment. I think when we have these expectations
Mm.
and we're placing our identity in something else, it's like, no, we need to reprioritize that pretty
Yeah.
significantly. And so yeah, so I have a role of life that I've developed. Basically, that's just it looks like I have, morning prayer. I've got an afternoon prayer.
Hmm.
I've got times that I pause throughout the day. I've got do a prayer of examine, just scripture reading, where throughout the day I go back and just constantly
Mm.
remind myself whose I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that it's not and a reminder that it's not about me. I need that. Beyond that,
Yeah.
our
We all
identity
need
and
that.
everything else gets put out into the world because the world's telling us what we should be and need to be. And
Hmm.
Instagram, I mean, you follow Instagram for 2 minutes and you're realizing you're not living up to everybody else, and you're just like, good grief,
Hmm.
or at least what it appears everybody else is living. Which is why
Absolutely.
we have a depression and anxiety and a mental health crisis going on right now. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And I'm going back to what we talked about earlier in our conversation about how we start our days. I think that's so crucial. And so I love that you shared kind of how you put that I don't know, guardrail in place for yourself. I know for me, when I don't get up early, and the same two things that work for you work for me. When I get up and I move my body and I spend time with the Lord before anything else about life starts or picks up, my days are different. They just are.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, even just a couple days ago, and there's again, like you said, there's so much grace, right? Like I had a day a couple days ago that I just was really tired. We'd had a long weekend and I didn't get up, and um, I had to keep reminding myself, like I can spend time with the Lord anytime today that I have time. I don't have to do it right, like first thing when I get up, but as a general principle, it does change my marriage and my days when I go into
yeah,
to my days like that. And so I
yeah.
love that that's the
Well,
case
and I
for you
think,
too.
one thing that I have a spiritual mentor who's told me is notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're noticing in
Yeah.
your body. Notice what you're noticing about your attitude, or, if you're, a little bit more keyed up than average, and go, what's different. And I know that I
Mm,
notice that. I notice that when I'm not, if I haven't worked out right away in the morning, I can tell a difference as my day's going on, that I feel behind, or I feel, working out for
yeah.
me is an emotional, mental thing as much as it is a physical thing. So much
Yeah.
as physical exercise. So notice what you're noticing about yourself. And I think God speaks to us through that.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that. Okay, there's a question that I ask all of my guests, and I'm excited to ask you, Josh. The podcast is called Radical Radiance, with a heart to help women see how they can radiate the heart of Christ in all that they do. And so the question I love asking is, what about Jesus makes you radiant?
Hmm. Oh, wow. Sorry. I picture Jesus in a chair. So we have two chairs in our sitting room, and usually I'm
Mm,
the first one up. And my wife, we actually have three chairs sitting in our sitting room. My wife usually sits in one, I sit in the other. But there's an empty chair there that I always see Jesus sitting in. And it's like
mm,
he's just waiting for me to sit with him and have a conversation with him. And he
yeah.
doesn't rush me, he doesn't demand of me, he celebrates me, he loves me, he guides me, and he's always sitting there waiting. And I think that is what makes me radiant about him, is that I know that he's always waiting. And
Yeah.
when I go astray in my life, it's because I haven't taken the time. It's like I become the teenager whose parent is sitting in the house saying, "Hey, come sit with me, talk to me." And it's like, "Oh no, I got to go out with this friend. I got to go out with that friend. I got to go do that." And it's like I become the teenager who's just so busy that I don't have time for my parent. It's like he's always there waiting. And even if I
Yeah.
do get busy and I don't have time for him, when I come back, he's waiting for me with open arms. Um,
Mm.
that's what it is for me, is that he is such a loving, merciful, graceful God, grace-filled God who just is waiting for me and loves me so much. Um, I've got 3 kids that I love like beyond words, and yet Jesus loves them even more than I do, and he loves me more than that. And I'm like, I don't even know how that's
Yeah.
possible. So it's
Oh,
that
that's so good.
characteristic of him, of his just, I think of John, um, you know, just the beloved disciple, and just how much, just even reading the book of John, just the love relationship. It's just all about his love.
Yeah.
And I think that's what compels us to be obedient. It's what compels us to righteousness.
Mhm.
But it's that love that first and foremost leads us there. And that's what's been so good for me.
Yeah. That's so good. The verse that God really laid on my heart when I was naming the podcast was Psalm 34:5. And it says, "Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces shall never be
Mm-hmm.
ashamed." And so this idea that when we look to him, that's what produces radiance. It's not what we strive for. It's not what we work towards. And for an achiever type personality, it's so freeing to me to know that when I spend time in his presence, that is what makes me radiant. So I love that so much.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
I
I'm
am.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. So I'm so excited about the message of this book, and I can't wait for listeners to pick it up. So I would love for you to share, where can they connect with you? Where can they grab the book after this conversation?
Yeah, so famousathome.com is where you can find everything that we do, from our podcast,
Awesome.
Famous at Home podcast, to the book, Famous at Home. That's where you can find us, and we're on Instagram and other places as well there, but you'll see all that linked. So
Awesome. Good deal. Well, Josh, I'm so grateful for you and for this message, and I can't wait for listeners to get their hands on it. So thank you again for being my guest today.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.